difficult to do what we're doing than sort of fractal gambling tokens that ICO over hundreds of millions of dollars. Typically, social impact projects just find it harder to do everything. So it's really great that everybody is here. There are obviously a lot more organizations out there, but you know we can hopefully bring them into the fold and get everything going. So I'm going to take this opportunity just to talk to you a tiny little bit about Alice. For those of you who don't know, because I think most of you do. But we're a social impact network that's built on Ethereum. We've been around since, that's almost as loud as Alice. Her name is Alice. She's going to be around a lot tonight. Stop people talking. Anyway, so we're a social impact network built on Ethereum. We've been around since 2015. The mission of Alice is to help identify social and environmental projects that are making a real difference. So we use crypto economics incentives to make sure that social organizations are transparent about what they're achieving, about their impact, so that it makes it easier for funders to like identify really good projects and then scale them up. Because that's often the problem in our space. We have really good projects, but they struggle to grow, nobody knows about them, etc. So we want to solve that problem. The way that we're going about it, the first big pillar of how we're going to get there is a conditional donation platform, so a donation by results, where you give some money to a cause that's on the platform, but the money only gets paid out when the charity can prove that it's achieved its goals. So there has to be an independent validator for each project, either a human or a machine. And that is, if you like, the incentive layer to make sure that the data about the impact gets published. Now, it doesn't work on a standalone basis because how to run a project before you get the money to run it, right? You only get paid by definition after the fact. So we have an impact investment platform that is meant to provide seed capital to these charities so they get money up front, they can run the project. The impact investors underwrite the risk of projects failing. So if no goals are achieved by the non-profit, they lose their money. But if the non-profit does achieve its goals, then part of the escrow donations go to pay back the impact investors. So in that case, we have donors whose donations are guaranteed, social organizations that don't take any risks, because they have all the money up front, and impact investors who can make some profit on these projects. So everybody's happy, hopefully. What we're announcing tonight, and I'm going to segue nicely to Rune from Make It Out, if I can find where it is. Yeah, there you go. So this is what typically a donation platform. So what we have in production is the donation platform, the donation by results. The impact investment stuff is coming. The technical architecture is up and running. It's all open source, so we'd love to have people sort of hack around with it, play around with it. It's not a real product yet because it's not compliant and all the rest, but the donation platform is. Up until now, so it looks like a normal donation platform which you can give to. This is the new project that we're going to announce tonight. It's a charity called Forgotten Animals that's helping wild animals in Russia that are held captive, that are abused, helping build a sanctuary to protect them, essentially. Up until now, we've only been able to provide donations in fiat, that then use a stablecoin to make everything work in the back end. As you can see, there are a bunch of goals that the charity needs to achieve in order to receive the money, and there are some nice stories about the animals that they saved already, and an explainer about how this works. So I'll let you guys play around with that. But the really awesome thing about building on Ethereum, obviously, is that we can integrate with other solutions out there. We were struggling in 2015 to have some kind of stablecoin that really worked, and then stablecoins started appearing. And one of them is DAI by MakerDAO. And so tonight, for the first time, we're going to integrate donations in DAI onto the Alice platform. Thank you very much. QR code on the card that comes with the die and donate it to Forgotten Animals, right? Build up that cover. Without further ado, if I haven't forgotten anything, I'll announce some other stuff that I've forgotten for sure after the panel. But for now, I'm just going to let Rune, CEO of MakerDAO, talk and tell us how it works. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me right? Tell me if I'm moving too far away from my mouth. All right. So my name is Rune Christensen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Maker Foundation. And I'm just going to give a very quick rundown of Maker and what we can do for financial inclusion and social impact projects, with some examples of the stuff we're already involved in. But first, let me just give a very quick overview of Maker itself and what we are. So Maker is a decentralized platform and ecosystem for inclusive economic empowerment. We are a fully decentralized financial system on Ethereum. And also, our team and our foundation is a proud member of the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition, together with Alice and a whole bunch of other really cool projects. Yeah. So the primary thing that the Maker platform produces is the DAI stablecoin. So a stablecoin is a stable cryptocurrency. It's there's an ERC20 token, that's Ethereum token, that has a price of $1. Which creates a lot of really useful use cases for social impact related applications. Obviously there's just general financial inclusion. With a decentralized stablecoin that's permissionless, no barriers to entry, you can start actually banking all the unbanked. You can give them access to, long distance transactions, and stuff like microlending, like accessing microlending, accessing the global financial system. All this good stuff, even give them the ability to earn like a savings rate, like an interest on their money over time, which is a cool feature that's coming to the next release of that. And just in general, really empower like this kind of like general access to the kind of financial services that the unbanked and the disenfranchised has never had access to. And in general, this is really what we think is, this is really what motivated us to build Maker and try to really make it the most powerful, generalized, decentralized platform for finance. And of course, there's also a number of other, a little bit more specific use cases that are really relevant to social impact. Like so here I was disaster relief and kind of like the resilience of a decentralized stablecoin makes it a lot more useful in times of crisis when infrastructure, and in particular like regular financial infrastructure, isn't as reliable. And there's just like the general sort of ability to provide services to people who are normally ignored or disenfranchised is obviously really useful because you have a very efficient system. It's very cheap to onboard people, and there's no barriers to entry. We are also focusing a lot on making remittance more fair and efficient, because that's one of the things that's really like taxing the vulnerable people of the world who travel to other countries, send money back home to the families, and then have to pay like 15% of that money in remittance fees. And what's really cool is also just like the transparency that decentralized systems and decentralized stablecoins enable. In particular, when you think about the charity use cases or the donation use case, when you as a donor donate money to some organization that's telling you they're going to use it to help people, it's actually nice if you can track and you can follow that donation all the way through. And also you can do cool stuff like the Alice use case where you go even further and actually give people governance rights. So more generally, this is, it's like why stablecoins in general, right? And this is a picture from some time in the spring, right? And basically all this year is a good example of why we need stablecoins, right? It would really suck if you were a charity or if you were like some unbanked person that, had And Maker has been doing really well recently. We've got a lot of traction, a lot of partnerships with big institutions. Andreessen Horowitz did an investment recently buying the MKR governance token, which means that they're actually going to participate directly in the DAO and basically help govern the decentralized network. But actually the first partnership here on the list is Bifrost, which is what we did together with the Blockchain Coalition for Social Impact, which is really cool. And let's quickly dive a little bit into that in terms of how you can actually use DAI in the real world to get stuff done. Bifrost is basically a collaboration of different projects doing different things sort of in the stack of like charity-related finance, or like charity-related money transactions. As an example of a really basic use case that we use for is this like very rapid and resilient access to cash on the ground. The way it basically works is that together, like DAI is used by Sempo, which is a charity accounting system, and Ether, which is on and off ramp, like local Bitcoin style caching system. A charity is basically able to receive donations from its donors, convert it to DAI, send a DAI to an agent on the ground in a crisis zone or in an area where they're doing cash disbursements, change it to cash via this decentralized cash network, and give it out to people. There's also a whole bunch of other projects we're doing, a bunch of other integrations with various partners in the Bifrost ecosystem. There's Needslist, there's Heritage, which is Airbus, and this is an interesting case where we have a big institution that decided to get into crypto through charity. That was like the easiest way for them to get started with it. So they came to us and we did a partnership on that. And there's a quote. Okay, let's get to the fun part. This is the new partnership we have with Alice. And this is the page you can go to, so you can go over and grab some crystal DAI. Use your status wallet or MetaMask on your computer to donate DAI. And I'm going to try that now. Yeah!
Like donations.
Okay, we're just going to go to the tracking page. Okay. Just waiting for 12 confirmations. And so you can go and grab the DAI and you can send it and it'll show up here so you can get your account.
Nice, awesome.
All right, thank you everybody. Thank you, Rune. Another round of applause for Rune. Thank you very much for Before we kick off the panel, does anybody have any questions about DAI, MakerDAO that Rune can answer right now?
When it comes to micro donations, what are the friction costs of sending fiat to DAI and then cashing out for paying any NGO providers that want to get paid in fiat? What are those costs? Because when you are managing big donations, they are not very important. They are, but when you want to make like to direct or to steer millions of little donations, that's a very important point, and I'd like to know your insights about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the good news is that on the blockchain side, I should say, right, on the side of the DAI system, because we have various partnerships with scalability platforms that get us past the, like $1 for an Ethereum transaction, rather than we can do much better on something like the POA network and other similar scalability networks. The only cost is really on the banking side. So basically, it depends on
the other one is assumed that it's okay.
Yeah, so
Maybe outside.
basically that depends on the local banking system, right? What we have is these on-ramps in various countries, like the US, we have a nice on-ramp called Wire. In Europe, we have a bunch of upcoming on-ramps. And basically it depends on whether you're, if you're in Europe, for instance, it's a SEPA transfer maybe, or if it's a local transfer, it could be free. In the US, there are transfers that are almost costless depending on what kind of bank you have. So all in all, I think we're really helping push this down. But obviously, over time, as we scale, it'll only get better and better, especially as people migrate fully to the DAI economy, at which point the cost will literally be frictionless. One more question, right?
Yeah.
Quick question.
Oh, there you go. It showed up.
Hey. This is a leaderboard, so the more you don't like restrict yourself to just one more than that, you know, like go and try the die.
Is there anywhere I can read the mechanisms we're using to pay interest?
On a blog. Search for DAI savings rate.
That.
Yeah, I think if you go on Google and search for DAI savings rate, you should show up.
So that was a quick one, maybe another one.
Okay, question. What is the difference from differences from DAI and the stablecoin USD coin backed by Coinbase, for example?
Yeah, USDC. Great question. So DAI is so there are actually many different types of stablecoins around this. Generally known as three types. DAI is a kind of stablecoin called a crypto collateralized or multi-collateralized stablecoin. So it's backed in an open, decentralized platform through assets that are sitting in smart contracts on the blockchain. And the system as a whole is decentralized without an authority or a company sort of controlling or guaranteeing the value of the system. Rather, it's the tokens that are sitting in smart contracts that back it. And USDC, which is supported by Coinbase, is what's typically known as an IOU stablecoin. So that's a stablecoin issued by a central authority. That basically, the central authority basically says, I have $1 million in the bank, so I'm issuing 1 million tokens. And if you come to me with one of these tokens, I'll change it to $1 for you. And the other way around, you can come to me with $1 and I'll give you a token. And both of these models have their pros and cons. Obviously, the IOU centralized model is very easy to understand, whereas DAI is a bit more advanced. But yeah, all in all, I mean, what's cool about DAI is it still has some of the basic feature of having its real value behind it, right? But then not having to sacrifice decentralization.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think the maker guys are going to go and staff RaveCon, which is another thing altogether, so they might not be late into the workshops. And I'll tell you all about that in a second, but first we're going to do just a really quick panel with some people who have been working on blockchain-based social impact projects that are actually out in the wild already, and they're going to tell us a little bit about the challenges that they had to overcome to get there, and then we'll move on to the hands-on workshops, which is really what I guess everybody here is here for. For my speakers to come to the stage, please, Taka from Global Brain. Taka must be somewhere, there we go. Robbie from Consensus Social Impact. Simona from the Bounties Network. Wojtek from Giveth. And Grace from Blockchain for Humanity. Thank you. Please welcome everybody to the stage. So I'm not going to speak too much, I'm just going to moderate. These are all incredible people who have already done some social impact blockchain stuff. So I'm just going to let you all introduce yourselves, because you'll do a much better job than I do. Take 3 or 4 minutes to just talk about your project, maybe some of the challenges that you had to overcome to get there, and what the future looks like, whatever, and then we'll ask you some questions. We're going to try to make it as participatory as possible. Let's maybe start with Becca.
traditional VC fund. Traditional VC means like traditional equity fund, which does quite sector agnostic deal. So we are coming, from very much kind of capitalism way. Also, we've been investing into the several entrepreneurs which is solving the social problem, especially in the emerging market. So for instance, the company which I invest into is based out of Philippines, and on blockchain, doing the kind of financial inclusion. The name is Coins.ph, which actually also changed my kind of view into the technology and the world. What they're doing is primarily as a wallet, blockchain wallet, which is providing a lot of existing, maybe as all of you guys know the feature, as saving and sending, etc., etc. But what they are different from the other wallet, etc., is to bridge and connect into the offline channel, like bank ATM, for example, or like a 7-Eleven kind of convenience store across the nationwide. So, which is resulted the people's, can I do those kind of things now? Yeah. Which resulted to people without even having a bank account is able to withdraw the cash of Philippine peso over the bank ATM, which is quite amazing. And that kind of new technology bridge into the so-called financial inclusion in the region is really like a life-changing thing. So being as a VC, we've been like now like those between like traditional VC space or even crypto VC and social impact kind of fund, the border is getting more like closer, or it's kind of blur now, which I think we are able to change a lot of different things and in the greater kind of scale in the world. So that's where I think I'm here today. Relatively like maybe not known in the social sector, but we are kind of doing in that angle as a VC now. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Simona, please, for Bounties Network.
Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Simona, and I'm a co-founder of the Bounties Network. We created the Standard Bounties Protocol, and a lot of projects are using that. One that is very, very familiar to a lot of people is Gitcoin. And what we started doing at the beginning of, well, since the beginning of this year is really diversifying the use of bounties across different verticals. Social impact being an important one of those verticals, because what we are essentially saying is we can re-engineer the way social impact works, and flipping the model from a centralized organization asking individuals for money, and then individuals having to trust, or rather blind trust, that that centralized organization will do what they say they're going to do. We've seen plenty of cases where they do not. It's flipping that model on its head and saying, well, actually, we're going to reward individuals for verifiable proof of action in whatever initiative we might be dealing with. And actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned Coins.ph, because we have a project called Bounties for the Oceans that is ongoing. We set it up as our first partnership with Make Your DAO in the space, and so far we've had cleanups, again, individual cleanups from people who mostly have been new to the crypto space, and this was their first touch and interaction with the technology, and we've had cleanups from across the US, the UK, Tasmania, Venezuela, Berlin, other places in Europe as well. And what we are doing in the Philippines at the beginning of December is actually running an on-the-ground pilot, a cleanup of the Papachea Beach in Manila Bay. And we are working with volunteers on the ground, people from the slums on the ground, and giving them the option, if they want to convert the ETH that they're going to earn into Filipino peso, they can through Coins.ph. And I feel that is a loop that is missing in a lot of these initiatives, and which is why we felt it was very, very important to get that in there. There we go.
Thank you very much. Robbie, Consensus Social Impact.
Yes, my name is Robert Ringfield. I'm a co-founder of Consensus Social Impact, which is Consensus's social impact practice. So we focus on research, development, and partnership. So Project Bifrost with MakerDAO, something that we're very proud of, and really a general focus on cash transfer programming. So the movement of value more efficiently for crises in humanitarian aid and remittances, as well as a lot of other use cases like contentious topics like identity, focusing on policies and ethics concerns that people need to take into account more, and immutable evidence. So this is mainly in the context this year of war crimes committed in Syria, so proving those in the International Criminal Court with Hollow Systems, and also sexual assault reporting. So creating a supply chain and allowing survivors to anonymously track their sexual assault so they don't wait 20 years, or at least in the United States that's the case. And of course, working with the amazing bounties and finding different ways to incentivize people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't, both intrinsically and extrinsically. And then of course on the partnership side as well, I can't leave out my homies out here. We have a brand new partnership with Black Girls Code because another focus is accessibility. So enabling marginalized communities, particularly the Black community, to understand, and realize the opportunity within the blockchain space, become the next leaders. Because if you don't include every community, you're not going to have the solutions.
Maybe Wojtek first before Grace, because the projects are kind of linked, or whichever way you guys want.
Yeah, we can do that. So hi, my name is Wojtek. I'm Czech. So maybe that's the only reason why I'm here outside the community.
Token representative.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do with Giveth is we're trying to build communities around causes. We're trying to bring trust back into charitable giving. We're trying to maximize the impact that is done through donations. And we're doing that by increasing the transparency and accountability with our platform. And there has been attempts before, and but this technology, blockchain, is the first one that is actually allowing it. And since I'm a developer, I'm going to be very brief, not go into details, and leave more time for the discussion and the workshop afterwards. But basically, the technological part that I want to mention here is that we're a few weeks away of integrating DAI as well. Which is the only last missing piece that we really needed. All right, thank you.
Cool, thank you very much. So formally I'm moderating, but I'm just going to ask a few questions and then we're just going to open it up. Oh, sorry, Grace. Oh, sorry, so sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I just opened a little here that I feel like already has covered everything. Actually, I'm also a co-founder of Giveth and a co-founder of Blockchain for Humanity. So Wojtek has given us the pitch for Giveth. Thank you, Wojtek. I take that out. And I will explain to you a little bit what Blockchain for Humanity is. And this is what really excites me to be here. We all believe that this technology is actually going to make a big difference in our world. And we want to make sure that it actually does and it reaches as many people as possible. Therefore, we want to accelerate projects that are actually working using this technology to create any type of social impact type of project. Meaning any type of positive impact, anything that can be scalable, that can be used in large scale communities and so on. We want to inspire them, we want them to bring those ideas on board, and we want to be able to lift them up and take them there. So with that, we actually do two steps to go into this program. We call for applications. We get, right now, we actually have done the call for application about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, or maybe, and we have about 32, 33 applicants. inspires me so much because you think that there maybe aren't so many projects out there, but they are. And they want help, and they need our mentorship, and they need our support, our seed money, whatever it is that we can actually bring forward with them. And we will select a few of them at the Latin American Bitcoin Conference, which you're all invited to come and join as well, in Santiago, Chile this year, first week of November, to actually select and give a prize to these projects who are actually bringing forward this technology in social media. And the second phase of that is to actually accelerate. So let me cut it here because I already got this card and continue through the panel. Thank you.
Great. So just another round of applause for everybody, please. It's really great, you know, like people say, oh, blockchain is coming, but actually blockchain is here already, and there are some products that are already out there that people can use, which is awesome. And so, as I said, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions, then open it up to you guys. But I think one of the most important things for us at Alice was when we started in 2015 was trying to get the technology out to as broad a user base as possible. This was before DAI was live. We took the decision to do a stablecoin where people could just donate with their credit cards, do some kind of hybrid, bastardized stablecoin system, putting the money in segregated accounts, playing around with tokens, etc. And so DAI makes life a lot easier. I was wondering whether maybe you could share with the projects that you've worked on what kind of obstacles you had towards mainstream adoption, and maybe how you're working towards getting onboarding more users for your project.
That would be super insight to start. So transaction fees, just general bad UX practices in the blockchain ecosystem. I don't know why our community thinks that just because there's a D in front of the word app that like just rules have just changed. Also as part of that, transaction confirmation is difficult, and really making sure that that whole blockchain aspect is completely back in. I think those two things are most problematic because it turns systems like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, into buy-in systems, meaning you cannot use Ethereum if you do not have Ether. I mean, even on the test networks, you have to have the test Ether. And that's a huge issue. So changing architecture so that the onus is on the dApp developer to, one, make a solution templatable so that anyone can use it without technical knowledge, particularly in the social sector. And second, to pay for those transactions so the people who are using it, particularly if you're using a bounty, they can just transact that value. They don't have to worry about like this secondary form of value that's going to enable them to do what they need to do. Yeah.
I would agree on that, and I think again one of the main things that we've seen is having to introduce all of these different concepts like gas, like if you click submit 15 times, it will create 15 transactions. And developing the UX, and a lot of people, you're used to Web 2. If you want something in Web 2 to work, you click it until it does. Not so with blockchain applications. And I think it's the responsibility of the dApps and of the wallets to make sure that that guidance is there, that information is there, that flow that guides users through these very, very new concepts that are very, very important to navigating this world. But at the same time, I was watching a guide to email the other day from the late 80s, and it was 20 minutes long. So, it's new concepts do take time to understand, but absolutely we have to make it a lot easier and a lot more in line with current use.
Right, and the Giveth guys, I mean, you guys have been, it's both a product that you have, but also a community, right? And you, from the very beginning, you've been true believers, and it's much more, correct me if I'm wrong, but much more about people who are in the crypto community and organizing them around all of this. I mean, what's your journey been on that front, and how easy or difficult has it been to onboard people and get them used to working in a different way?
Yeah, from our experience, this actually hasn't been a problem because we've already taken people that are in crypto, that already understand it. But now we're starting to reach out actually outside of the crypto space, and we're discovering very similar findings. And actually, us ourselves, our budget was in Ether, so we were also, we also felt this space and how it hit and this bear market. Actually, the main thing that I would like to say, and I think that's the reason for this workshop, is that from our experience, there's a lot of people building very cool stuff in the space. Sure, it's maybe not user-friendly because the whole space is not user-friendly, but something is being built. And on the other side, in the non-profit sector and in the social impact sector, this technology is very hip, everyone wants to also be part of that. But very often, from our experience, they're trying to build something themselves. And that's what I'm hoping here will happen. We will unite the projects that are being built in the sector with the social impact projects in the real life and collaborate.
And that's actually a perfect segue for my next question to both Grace and Taka. I mean, in different ways, you're investing in blockchain for social impact projects, you're incubating projects that are going to be run on the blockchain using that kind of stuff. I mean, what are the things that you look at when you're onboarding or thinking to invest in those projects, and what are the challenges, maybe if there are any trends, the challenges that you find with these projects in terms of like getting them out to market or getting them to use blockchain technology? Maybe you started with Grace.
Yes, it's not a challenge to get them to start using blockchain because these projects are actually inspired to use blockchain to make that happen. So from that side, we don't have a problem, but we do have a problem being able to assess the scalability of the project. And that has to do with a lot of stuff that you're talking about the stability of the coin, how feasible it is, which infrastructure should I use. And, as much as we all love Ethereum, we do have options out there that we could start exploring and doing other things with. And we are actually trying to see how we can expand that view, use different infrastructures that perhaps will give us different benefits for the projects that we're trying to accelerate. So we believe that that sort of pairing is necessary, that it's not a one-fit model for all. And from that perspective, I think it's something that is manageable. And I think the technology as we advance is giving us the opportunities to actually place them in the right place.
Awesome. And Taka, maybe from an investor's perspective, when you're evaluating these projects?
Especially like being a traditional investor, we've been looking at how the project is going to be scalable as well as sustainable. And especially sustainable is more like especially social sector is environmentally and those kind of issues. Try sustainable, but mainly economically not sustainable, unfortunately. And that's where most challenges come from. And then we've been looking, we've been keep asking to the entrepreneurs or projects that who is your customer, what kind of pain point, what kind of social pain point you're solving, and then how much they are willing to pay, or if the direct customer is not willing to pay, who is able to pay. And that's kind of like very kind of basic question as being as a kind of economically sustainable things, but that kind of thing is still like missing a space, and that's where also like cryptoeconomics might be able to solve part of its problem. So being as an investor, we are not just only looking at financial aspects, but in order for projects to be really sustainable, those economic still like incentive economic perspective is definitely needed. That's where we're coming in to help them even design how that would be sustainable. That's where we are looking.
Great, thank you. And maybe finally, Robbie, I know it's not directly your role, but I know Consensus does a lot of venture funding for social impact projects. So how does that mesh between what you're doing at Consensus, which is the social impact part, and then the funding side of Consensus?
Yeah, I mean, as most people know, Consensus has a lot of different funding avenues, from going through the prototype process with Consensus Labs to Consensus Venture Capital, which just started, the Tachyon Accelerator, which has a social impact track, and then also the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition and the incubator as well. So, I mean, just like my colleagues on the panel, one is looking at sustainability and passion and ability, and obviously, a while back we saw that with Alice, but I certainly agree that the funding mechanism for these type of projects, there really needs to be a greater signal from the foundations. And I think Ethereum Foundation and MakerDAO in particular have led that, because you have to give the entrepreneurial incentive that the community cares about these projects for them to occur and be successful, just like any commercial project. And oftentimes, the result of those successes isn't just, helping improve the quality of someone's life or, the environment, but solving some really critical UX issues that all of the dApps face. And typically these projects are open source as well. So, for Consensus Social Impact, in terms of the partnerships that we do, typically a lot of the projects we do are pro bono. We're just looking for that passion, that ability, and particularly affecting areas in which there is alignment between the commercial sector and social sector, and social impact bonds, which Alice, you are attending to, renewables, recyclables, in which you're making something that naturally has a directly socially impactful result, but can be economically viable for investors on the commercial side, and bring money into sustainable projects and close that philanthropic gap. So, there's a lot of different parts, but I think the first thing is just signaling, one, from the entrepreneurial side that you're interested, reaching out, certainly, and then the second, working toward something that's going to last beyond all Ethereum's updates and so forth.
Awesome, thank you. So now I guess, I don't know if there's a mic that's going around the room. So that one. Please go ahead, ask questions.
Okay. So hi everyone. I came from Portugal directly just for this workshop.
Not for DevCon, just for this workshop.
And basically, I'm in the opposite side of you guys. So me and Miguel, we started a charitable giving platform several years ago. We merged with the US company that is our competitor. We've raised almost 30 million to charities. We have 20,000 charities, almost $1 million. And now we are merging all of this ecosystem to blockchain, because one thing is that if we die, we want to make sure that there is an infrastructure in place for anyone that can use it. If we die as it started, or whatever. And I just have two questions. One of the things that we do is not only on the consumer side, it's also on the corporation side. So in a way to improve employee engagement by supporting the causes they care about, by giving gift cards, matching donations, internal crowdfunding, volunteering, etc. So one question, I don't know which one of you is more able to answer that, is how do you see so far corporations engaging on adopting cryptocurrencies as a way to support or sponsor this kind of, or it can be crowdfunding or grants or whatever, because it's something that because we work with several big corporations, we are trying to deal with them, but then, okay, how do we put that on the fiscal or the financials and all that sort out. The other thing is more related with how do you see that technology and the extra layers, I don't know if you guys have the extra layers of Ethereum to make it really scalable, so we can have, let's say, at least 1,000 users trying to make a donation at the same time. So what's the timeline for that, if you have an idea of that, or whatever?
All right. So the question number one one was corporations. So basically corporations, they sell something, part of that goes to non-profit social impact. Well, this is where it becomes very interesting with blockchain, because you don't have to anymore say, hey, 10% of our profits goes to NGOs. You can say, hey, 10% of your purchase is for you to delegate and choose where it actually goes, and it's traceable. It's really nice. It's all on blockchain. Everyone can see it, and it engages the customer even more, right? And there's a few nice examples that are trying to solve that. For example, here's my friend Alice, who's
Shelving.
Who's trying to work on exactly that. And the second question was scalability, right? And when Ethereum is going to be there. So I think that's a maybe wrong question. Better question would be, what is the use case we need to solve, and what technology can be used for that? So there are right now other chains that traded decentralization for bigger scalability, and if you don't need decentralization, maybe you can go with some other chains, and most of the things that we work on can also be deployed on other chains that maybe are more centralized, but can scale. And Ethereum today, there was a nice presentation. Scalability is something they're solving. They've been saying that it's going to be solved now. Later on, it's going to be solved next year. Nobody really knows. It seems soon, but there's no hard deadlines. But I think even now there are some nice options that you can use, basically some other chains. Yeah.
So to answer your first question, which is corporate, my LP is mostly enterprise and institutional investors. And given the condition and the global environment for like ESG kind of stuff, they are definitely looking at the space. I mean, they've already been doing a lot of contribution, like either it's donation or like a kind of PR purpose or a lot of things. And they have already a budget, aside and ready to do or already doing. But the problem they're facing is the technology wave is coming in, a lot of different options coming in, you have a lot of opportunity waiting, so you cannot actually select. So you need to let someone to handle those kind of initiatives, otherwise you cannot be kind of accountable to your management team or even their shareholders. So the problem is whether it's cryptocurrency or not, or whether it's blockchain or not, you need to cater their first mile to tap into the space, how to kind of draw the money from them. So that's where we are coming in as a kind of intermediary, as a fund management kind of company, to let them, to guide them where to go and what the opportunity or what the path they might have. And then eventually decision is made by them. But corporate is, again, given that condition, the global environment, what we are facing, they are in pressure to do those kind of things as well. So we are in that stage. So there's a gap in between those who need money and those who like to deploy the money. So we are now discussing and trying to structure the new way, not just pure kind of VC fund, but also kind of different themes, different topic, different way of sector to deploy with more like social impact or social good things. So that's kind of situation as far as I know of, mainly in Japan and Asia, but it's, I think, the global phenomenon we are in, I believe. For the second part, I truly have full respect to the Ethereum community, and Ethereum is the one which is really running in this scale of network as well as developer community as well as people surrounding for some are kind of quite skilled on there, but the majority of them are doing for good things. Not necessarily socially good as today, but they're good for someone, right? On Ethereum. And there's definitely a lot of different chains coming up because Ethereum is definitely facing the So I don't know in the 5 years time, but definitely Decentral once it keep running and keep being decentralized and keep being attracting this level of global people. That's I believe.
I'm just going to do a quick shout out because there are people from other blockchains here. So there are the guys from IXO, and specifically focused on social impact. I think Rootstock is here, Gabby, if you raise your hand, etc. So it's definitely not just about Ethereum. Sorry, Chris.
I just wanted to just mention that the industry did a great job with the corporate social responsibility, creating guidelines around that, and it was helping a great deal. I think we need to transition that to crypto social responsibility, and I think Shelton is actually doing that. And this is what we need to start doing, right? So starting the guidelines that allows these corporations to easily adopt this. And let's go and make them. Exactly. Yeah, crypto social responsibility.
And maybe as chair's privilege, we've seen, working on this since 2015, trying to get into institutional charities as opposed to you guys working with the crypto community, and now trying to work with impact investors proper. It has always been painfully long to get these non-profits on board. They're inherently super conservative, super concerned about transparency and being called out and things like that. Impact investors, especially in the UK where we're based, have a really big focus on wet contracts as opposed to smart contracts. So they're excited about smart contracts, but they're like, how is this all going to work out? How do we protect our partners' money, etc. So it's you have to be prepared for a long, arduous process to convince them, at least from our perspective. Maybe somebody else on the panel or something said about that.
Yeah, I mean, real short. I mean, certainly to Ralph's point, it's just really slow. I think having a good onboarding, like educational deck, as to how you're going to facilitate that conversation is super important. And starting with bigger NGOs, I think, are starting to come around to it because, I mean, their role operationally is dispersing money, right? From typically high net worth individuals and then the consumer donors. So it's kind of a natural part of their evolution in terms of their role, you know, within the social sector as to, okay, we transfer value this way, there's this new way, how can we do it more efficiently? And some are certainly open to that. On the CSR, the corporate social responsibility part, it's a lot different because you have that brand alignment of the Cisco Foundation and a Cisco, in which they have to be even more conservative. I would say though, in terms of, at least in the scope of Ethereum, payment channels, which Spank Chain is really leading the community on that, is certainly a good thing to look into when it comes to payments. Of course, that doesn't apply as much to the social sector dApps as it does to, you know, remittances and so forth.
Maybe another question from the audience?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I actually have a question very related to this. With how do you feel about, because we're still in early stages when it comes to blockchain development, what do you think about this tension between what we want to do and the disruption that we're bringing to the blockchain world and to social good, and what the corporations and big non-profits want to do? So because they have a strong voice, they know what they do, they have their complete organizations built around it, and we are small. We're like a small group building this, and so my question is like, how can we find the balance to not really adapt too much to their needs and still really disrupt this and create the transparency and accountability that we really want?
I'd like to take that one, and I think it's mainly two ingredients. I think it's education and practical application. Doing it small and then mapping out everything that you've learned in a small pilot and then proving out that that is potentially replicable at scale. And the education piece is key because we have had so many conversations, like Robbie mentioned earlier, it's so lengthy because you are again introducing very new concepts and a very, very different way of doing things, to the point where everybody needs to be aligned and everybody needs to understand what they are doing. You're talking on the ground downloading wallets, understanding potentially like having the internet connection to do so on out in the field. If I'm saying you need to go and clean up a beach, well, there better be internet on that beach for you to be able to do that. So we're talking a completely different way of doing things that we will only be able to map it out once we have these test cases. And then once we have them, we can then go, okay, well that didn't work. What can we do to solve that? And then maybe this did work. How about we do it bigger next time and a little bit bigger? So case in point is conversations potentially with organizations like WWF. They do so much good, but again, they need to understand that full circle that you're proposing and what are the risks, what are the implications, how much resource, how much more resource will it take from an organizational point of perspective for all of their employees to understand what they're doing. So yeah, education and pilots.
I think I agree with you 100%. And I think in the end, it's not going to be a push, it's going to be a pull. In the end, there are going to be organizations that are going to be the role models, and they're going to be the first ones who are going to be up there. And other organizations are going to say, hey, this is the way it actually has to be. And, inevitable, they will start joining this. It will take time.
Add one comment to that. I think that the industry has come a long way. So in 2015, again, 2016, we get blank stares from non-profits. I think a lot of non-profits are also feeling a little bit queasy about what we're doing. So particularly fundraising teams, like conditional donations, restricted donations, that stuff does not fit with the KPIs of just like generating as many donations as possible. But at the same time, that model is broken because if it were working, people would be, the public trust in the non-profit sector would be much higher. So I agree with that. There are some that are going to lead the way, others that are going to come on board, and others that maybe wither and die if they don't adapt. But I'm personally very comfortable with that.
Small bit for me is research partnerships. So, just like the Ethereum Foundation is putting, a huge emphasis on research, and honestly, again, there's an ongoing conversation and emphasis as to where the community should put its money, I think certainly research in terms of like scalability of cryptoeconomic models and gas and stuff like that is all good and well, but you also need research, for sectors, particularly like the social sector, because it thrives off of that. It's very academic. And the Mercy Corps, the Red Crosses, the WWFs, that is their first step into something when they're thinking about it seriously. And, for a startup or, any group in here, that's an easy ask, right? To say, hey, we're going to take this step by step. We're not going to charge you at all. Let's just work through this together and put a body of work that is going to bring some type of brand recognition to your nonprofit as a thought leader in the space. And that's going to make them a lot more comfortable to try, okay, yeah, let's try the data to our thing. So things like that. And it can be, and typically those research sprints are very simple. It's just like, okay, how scalable are transaction costs for remittances in Venezuela, right? I think ease the queasiness in terms of how they feel about it. Another question, maybe? Yeah.
Actually, a personal duty to give answer to this question, and it's also our global duty. We're talking about adoption of blockchain technologies and everything, but when talking about social impact on blockchain, there is a much more needed idea and adoption to be taken. There is the idea the world needs to be changed. People live with their soma, and we are here worried about this, but most of the people don't give a fuck. How do we get to adopt that idea?
I have a ready-made answer for that. I think people do give a fuck. No, I really do. I think people give a huge fuck about what we're doing, and I think people are fed up with a lot of the inefficiencies that we have in our centralized systems. One of the problems that everybody is solving in this space, not just in terms of social impact, is the transparency and the accountability and the sharing of information. That translates to impact data and figuring out which are the organizations that do the best work, but it also applies to government, to banks, and to all the rest. I think it's just a separate question to say, well, why don't they give a fuck about this project? Or how do we get them to get engaged, because it's like maybe a little bit difficult and a bit overwhelming to be using Web3. For me, it's more an onboarding process and an ability to really chime with people, to really hit with, to put your message out in such a way that it really resonates with what they're feeling as individuals, what the problems that they're feeling, the frustrations that they're feeling, and what their needs are, basically. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, and this is something that I have like very strong opinions about. I think it's interesting because our community's understanding and definition of diversity and inclusion as to how to get people to care is very different from what marginalized communities understand. Right? There is diversity in thought, right? That's cool. But then there's also like socioeconomic status, right? Or geography. And these are things that you don't hear about when we talk about proof of stake systems and proof of work systems innately being, plutocratic, right? You can't operate efficiently in a proof of work system if you don't have resources to get miners. Just as you can't do that in a proof of stake system if you don't have tokens. In order to get tokens, you have to have internet. And in order to have internet, you need to have money. So it's exclusive by nature. And this is an issue that I think we have to reconcile in addition to making things scalable. It can't be that that's going to be the afterthought once we get governance systems up and same people who have been in government systems for the past 400 years are just going to transition to that. And then the second thing is, and this is specific to Ethereum when it comes to how decentralized is it and how do we get community members involved, again, so that they can care, is node diversity, right? If you look at the distribution of nodes in Ethereum, there are some pretty big gaps, right? Like full continent gaps. And the fact that we're not mobilizing these resources with universities that are in the continent of Africa, in South America, right, to include them so that they're actually stakeholders now, right? Like their say matters because they're part of the collective hash power is super, super important and like really easy. Like, that's not like solving world hunger, right? It's just setting up some computers. So sometimes I feel like we tend to overthink things in terms of how we can include people, and that's going to make them care when they feel like they're an owner in the process. But we have yet to really do that, so it's certainly something that I hope to see.
This actually is a good caveat to what you just said. One of the biggest concerns I have for the industry right now is we talk a lot about developing products for emerging markets and including emerging markets. But all the solutions we've developed are desktop first, and those markets are mobile first. So by creating all of these tools, we're actually leaving wide swaths of populations behind because we're developing in a way that they can access. So what I'm wondering is, what do we look at as the patch for that? How do we develop out this industry and not leave behind people in centralized opportunity even more than it is today?
I would say more React Native projects, for sure. Focus on Android first, not iOS. I mean, apples are cool, but most people don't have apples. And making sure that those templates are open source. It shouldn't be like this whole journey to get a Web3 connection to your React Native app, while you're confirming a transaction. That shouldn't be like a whole thing. You should be able to focus on its functionality. And when you start to see that and people actually try mobile, I think a lot of people are scared of mobile,
right? Because if you're just getting their hands on web, just try. There's no failing. So.
And I think maybe as well, we have all of these hackathons that tend to be, I mean, the vast majority of them are in America and Western Europe. So what about the rest of the world? I mean, to be honest, my favorite hackathon to date is East India, because the level of enthusiasm, creativity, and just everyone was there, regardless of whether they had ever coded Solidity, whether they were just interested in the space, because it can potentially provide a huge opportunity for developing, for creating new projects, for supporting different things that maybe were not possible before is a big thing. And maybe that's where we need to encourage these initiatives and get them going a lot more and support them.
Yeah, I would just have 3 questions for you guys. Just a quick poll. Who here is a developer, a blockchain developer? Okay. Who has tried to develop anything on mobile with blockchain? And who thinks it's much, much, much worse experience than developing for desktop? Yeah. So I would say that we all know that this is the world of applications and not desktop, but the tools to build applications are so far behind building desktop applications that we need to do something first, and then we can go to building applications from phones.
So we're going to keep going with questions until the food arrives, because there's going to be some food. We'd like to know. It's coming. I have a few things to say before you get to the food, but it's not yet there yet. Please.
I'd like to continue on the technical thing because we have a trade finance project that works in emerging markets, specifically Africa, and we're starting in Rwanda for Congo. And the things we run up against are we can sponsor, say, the first rollout, but to actually drive adoption, we need hardware wallets at the sub $10 mark. As you mentioned, we need much better mobile experiences. We need lightweight nodes that actually sync for markets with low bandwidth. And you mentioned that internet costs money. And if you have very bandwidth hogging wallets, apps, transaction signing, it eats up money. So it's not efficient commercially either. So I think what I'd like to ask is, anybody want to work on an emerging markets tech track? It requires the ecosystem, or it requires the tools to be more efficient. And I think that's good overall for the ecosystem as a whole. So social impact actually does have a really major impact on blockchain.
Okay, I'm going to answer from our perspective. So first of all, yes, absolutely. I think part of the issue that we face, and we're guilty of this, definitely. We're based in London. Our first few pilots, last year we did a pilot with a London-based homelessness charity to help people find homes in London. And I remember when I went to an effective altruist group in London to talk about what we're doing, because effective altruists are all about measuring the impact, giving only to causes that have this. I was talking about this homelessness project, and they were like, nobody here is going to give to that. Why? I thought he was saying nobody's going to give through Alice. I'm like, well, why? It's perfect. They're like, no, because who cares about homelessness in the UK? There are other places where it's a much bigger problem, right? And as a team, it's more like, because we have limited resources, and because we are operating because we want something that works, it's much easier to take first world problems in a way, and making it work with first world people. But really, definitely, and which we're crap. You guys are great, but we're terrible at documentation. We're not sorry, you guys. We could be better at documentation, right? That would make it easier for people across the world, because everything we do is open source, to pick it up and work on it. And we definitely want those people to come in and be educated and help us build stuff out. And from our perspective, it's a question of resources. We would love to be able to identify with, we can't go to Ethiopia or whatever, but be able to work with some of those groups. So working on an emerging markets track would be awesome, definitely. I don't know.
One thing, and this is not just for the devs, this is for designers, policymakers, whomever. But one thing that I've noticed is that, like, when trying to create tools, like more scalable tools, like mobile apps using React Native, people always go first to, okay, I got to connect that directly to Web3. It's like, no, you don't. Like, completely decentralized stacks is not a thing. It's just not. And the minute that you realize that, and the minute that you realize the expectation from a mainstream consumer in terms of immediacy, you're like, okay, part of this, being the blockchain part, can be the decentralized part. But you can leverage solutions like AWS to help things along, right? So one thing that we use a lot are meta transactions using serverless on AWS. So essentially, our React Native application just uses a normal API like any other thing, right? It returns the transaction spots, it either goes through or doesn't. The rest of the application is just a normal application. That's it. We pay for all the gas fees, it's fine. So sometimes I feel like we make it harder on ourselves when developing these, and we don't use our creativity in terms of, you don't have to abandon everything before Ethereum, or any blockchain for that matter, to use it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
I just think that we make it very complicated, and we're very spoiled as well. So we don't think of these things very often, but it's like sometimes to solve many of the problems that are out there, it's a very simple thing you have to do, and not this complicated, beautiful web, desktop applications that we are actually building. I came across this application which I actually love, and it's called Context. Exactly. Context. That is a problem that is solved immediately. I send Wojtek some money, and I just text his number because he has a number. He doesn't need to be connected to anything, and he gets the money. He doesn't need a wallet. He doesn't need to bother with all these numbers and this complexity that we actually built. And that tells me that there is the possibility to actually start solving problems. But we're looking at it in a different way. We're too complicated in the way we see things. It's much more simplicity where it's needed out there, and can solve really great problems. And I really think that solves the issue of just sending money across any type of any money across any border, across any country, across anywhere through a network line, not an internet line. So to me, that is already a solution, and we're not looking at it.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to add on the Grace point? Actually, those kind of things could be quite done by incumbent systems. Like the case of coins of PH again, the Philippine peso is able to withdraw the bank ATM without having bank account. Can be done on bank system, not on blockchain. It's just blockchain is a kind of enabler to beat that for those people who don't have bank account to just withdraw the money. So even like people don't even need the mobile or smartphone. They just sender definitely need the smartphone, but receiver doesn't need even like bank account as well as like neither like smartphone. So it's been done on incumbent system, which there are different world is built. So we are not going the decentralization is just maybe just it's not a result, but it's a process to be there. And in order to reach that point, we can use like existing traditional sometimes it's kind of architecture which seems to be kind of out of date, but can be used together with blockchain or open blockchain.
Thank you so much, everybody. So just a quick round of applause for everyone again. Thank you so much. Great. So there is food at the back. Don't get up just yet. You're going to have it in a second. I just wanted to say, don't forget to pick up your die and then claim it. If you have status, use that, or another MetaMask if you want to boot up your laptop, or any other Web3 browser. It's easier with status, I'm told, from MetaMask, because they've optimized for it. And if you don't have status, download it, because this is a great learning experience to actually use some cryptocurrency.
transparency, and then pick up a card as well as your DAI coin to be able to donate it to Forgotten Animals. Then there's some food at the back. Go and get some, and then we're going to do a working dinner, if you like, where we're going to get rid of the chairs, and we're going to loosely organize 3 groups. So for product UX and design, so it covers a lot of the stuff that we've been discussing, and it's really about all of us coming together as a Blockchain for Impact community, working towards solutions, whether that's emerging tech, UX onboarding, scalability or whatever, and trying to find some solutions, understanding what already exists, right, what tools you can already use, but then also identifying gaps and seeing what we can all work together on. And that's really the big objective of these workshops. There'll be a small panel at the end, just to feedback on the discussions. And if we can achieve one thing through this, and it's to map a little bit better what people can use right now and build on, and what needs to be developed still, that would be a great outcome. So there are going to be 3 main groups. One is going to be around product, UX and design, onboarding users, etc. That's going to be mentored. Every group is going to have an Alice person, but it's going to be mentored by Simona from Bounties, from Amy Carr, who asked the question before, from Galileo, who's also, by the way, setting up an exponential technology fund for African-based organizations. The people from RightMesh, Igor and Rachel, yes, they have an amazing sort of mesh network on the blockchain, which is awesome. So if you want to do that, there's a board at the back over there. For the fundraising, because obviously fundraising for social impact projects, we talked a little bit about it, but it's obviously a really important thing. So Nydia from Social Alpha Foundation, that's based in Hong Kong, is going to be mentoring that. Her organization gives grants to non-profits, blockchain-based non-profits. Also, we're going to have Taka at that one, and Ken from the Ethereum Foundation over there, who's from the grants team. So that group is going to be over there, if you want to talk about fundraising. And finally, there's going to be a hardcore technical group, which is going to be over here. So all the technical challenges that you might be facing with your social impact project. So we'll have the guys from IPSO, led by Cedric, talking about that. Julien from Flying Carpet, who are doing some amazing data sets with satellite imagery, merged with blockchain technology and data scientists. They'll tell you all about that. Really amazing engineer. And then there'll be our own CTO is also going to be there, Kuba. If Christoph, I don't know if Christoph is here from Charity DAO and from Slockit. His wife was about to give birth, so maybe not. Anyway, he may or may not be on that team. But thank you very much again. Grab some food and enjoy your tea. Sorry, one last thing. Anybody who signed up on Kickback, the amazing DApp that allows you to avoid having no-shows at your event. If you want your money back, then please make sure to sign up either with me, with Makoto, or with Kuba. And I'll remind you again at the end. Thank you.